The vast expanses of the oceans have always fascinated mankind. While the shipping routes were mainly used by trading vessels up to the middle of the last century, over the last 70 years people have discovered more and more what a great source of fun and relaxation waterways really are. Thanks to the success of their series of top-quality yachts, since 1978, Bavaria Yachts from Giebelstadt have played a major role in showing us how much you can enjoy your leisure time on the water. The range of innovations we utilize when constructing our lines of yachts, together with our inventory system and just-in-time production methods, allow us to build safe yachts achieving top quality at internationally competitive prices. With this DVD, we invite you on a tour of our boatyard and let you have an impression of the complex and innovative processes we utilize when producing our yachts. Bavaria Yachts are designed by the well-known firm of designers J&J. Working together with them over many years has clearly proved its worth. In order to ensure that the construction is carried out most effectively, the finished drawings and designs are optimized in our yard. In our offices high above the production lines, the engineers and production managers at Bavaria Yachts discuss how the attractive designs for the new yachts can be realized in the most efficient manner possible during the production process. Because only a well-organized, rational construction, together with the use of high-quality components, can achieve such excellent quality at cost-effective prices. The Yacht Store of Molds represents the first step in building a new yacht. For each kind of yacht available on the market, we have a suitable negative mold in store, totaling more than 50 different molds. Before and after each use, they are cleaned meticulously and checked for any potential damage. Once a customer gives the go-ahead for an order, the required mold is brought from the store and thoroughly cleaned once more. Not a single speck of dust can remain on the mold, as afterwards it will reflect on the quality of the gel coat surface. The whole mold is then transported to the spray room. A robot sprays the mold evenly with a gel coat. In the process, 2 vertical and 1 horizontal round of spraying create a powerful 0.7 mm thick outer skin for the yacht. The gel coat and the first 2 glass fiber layers are combined using water-repellent isophthal acid resin, which guarantees long-term osmosis protection. Once the gel coat has dried, the glass fiber layers are laminated on by hand. Doing so, the hull develops and grows inwards, so to speak. At the bottom, which will be subjected to the greatest forces later on, the laminate structure is reinforced and strengthened. After each length has been attached, the employees use rolls to remove any potential air bubbles. Furthermore, Kevlar matting is added in the yacht's bow section. This is intended to minimize any potential collision damage. Following a predetermined interval to permit the resin and matted fabric to combine optimally with each other, the hull above the waterline is reinforced once more. The sandwich laminate, made of PVC, serves to strengthen the hull and provide heat insulation. The bottom grid is then fitted into the hull. The pre-assembled U-section bottom grid also consists of a glass fiber resin laminate. The individual cells of the U-section ensure that the hull has the required rigidity. Furthermore, in the bottom grid of a sailing yard, a high-grade steel section is laminated in place. Later on, the mast will be placed on this steel section. In order to cushion the forces here, this section has a specially powerful construction. At the exact moment when it is to be fitted, the bottom grid sways out of the store and over to the hull. It is set and fixed in place to the exact millimeter. In addition, the fuel and water tanks are also positioned now. Once everything is in its correct place, the bottom grid and the tanks are glassed into the hull. The finished hull now goes to the oven, the so-called tempering hall. There the laminate is hardened. After hardening in the tempering hall, air pressure and a crane, the hull is lifted out of its mold. This requires a great degree of feeling and instinct, as the hull just now constructed should not be damaged in any way. Parallel to the hull assembly, in another department, the deck is being constructed. The process is almost identical to that with the hull. Here too, the upper shell of the yacht is laminated by hand. Every locker seat, every recess, every higher and lower section of the future deck is built up layer by layer. Once the hardening is finished in the tempering hole and it has been demolded, the upper deck is then transported to the deck milling robot. The large CNC machine processes the complete deck by itself, so to speak. By means of a laser and a mechanized scanner, the machine measures the angles of the upper deck, the yacht model is automatically identified, and off it goes. In less than an hour, all of the drill holes needed later on are bored, the hatches are milled out, overlaying edges are removed, recesses and borders are sawn. The machine measures the drill holes and cuts to the exact millimeter. This work, which would otherwise require a vast amount of time, has now been reduced to a minimum thanks to our targeted usage of this cutting-edge technology. At the same time, a similar robot is working on the hull of the yacht. Here too, the CNC machine is boring and cutting in accordance with a specially written program. A person working by hand could never achieve such 100% accuracy. The precision of these robots contributes to the high quality of our yachts. After the deck milling is completed, the finished upper deck is automatically transported to the deck assembly. This production line consists of 8 stages. At intervals of 20 minutes, the upper deck is transported from one stage to the next. This is highly advantageous for the employees, as they do not have to go from one deck to the next. Instead, the work comes to them. All of the required parts are already stored along the production line. This saves the fitters from walking around and creates an efficient workplace. During the deck assembly, the upper deck is completed, practically speaking. The winches, stanchions, cleats, lighting and fittings are installed. The order batch card on each deck ensures that it is produced exactly in accordance with the customer's wishes. Here too, the teak wood for the seating and flooring is glued using a vacuum process. At the final stage of the production line, the ship's deck is completely finished before it is then cleaned and polished. Already now the employees are waiting for it at the assembly line to fit it onto the corresponding hull. Parallel to the deck assembly, work continues on the hulls, completed by the CNC milling machine. The interior of the hulls are painted with top coat. With sailing yachts, the motors are installed during this production stage. The manufacturer supplies them directly to the line just in time. The engines required for 1 week's production are delivered to Giebelstadt and stored right along the production line. This saves the yacht's storage capacity and shortens the production time. A cost saving that we are happy to pass on to our customers. The engines have already completed their test run at the manufacturers and can be immediately used later on. Here too, the production order on each hull provides information about the configuration of the final yacht. After all, the employees need to know how much horsepower the customer wants during lulls in the wind. In this manner, the yacht takes into account the customer's wishes at all times, and that while producing different series of yachts. The hull has passed through 5 stages and is now ready for the interior fittings. Depending on the size of the yacht, the production crane places the hull on the appropriate assembly line. So as to guarantee the highest possible levels and consistency in terms of quality, the yacht produces almost all of its own parts. In order to implement this policy, major attention has been given to the design of the yacht's own joinery. Exactly those wood fittings are produced which are required for the yachts currently in production. Once a week, a delivery of mahogany from a managed plantation arrives at the yacht. Up to now, the timber has only been pre-cut. All of the solid wood parts will now be produced. The first bandsaw straightens the edges and the rough outlines are cut. Depending on the requirements, over the next days, the widest range of wood strips are milled from the timber. The finished strips of wood are placed automatically on a transporter. Sorted out in accordance with their use, they will now be cut into the correct lengths. At the same time as the solid wood strips are being produced, sheets of marine plywood are being cut to the size required later on for doors and the fronts of drawers. The transporter takes the boards with a 2 mm thick solid wood veneer to a processing cycle with several CNC machines and robots. The weekly demand for flaps as well as for press and cabin doors amounts to approximately 3,500 items. This number of items is completed in 1 week by just 4 employees. The first CNC machine processes the edges of the boards and applies the glue all around the wood. The switcher robot takes the boards from a new stack on the transporter, turns them after the first 2 edges have been processed, and places them back on the line. When all of the edges have been processed as required, it stacks the boards back on the transporter, all completely automatically. The next machine attaches the finished strips of wood to the door leaves and grouts both parts. Already now the final doors can be made out. During the next stage, the holes for the door locks and hinges are bored and milled. It is already now clear which door will be fitted to which yard. At this point in time, the corresponding hull is going through the hull milling process. Of course, with all the other wooden parts, such as the bulkheads, seat covers and small components, the system functions in the exact same way, precisely matching the yards. The items are first sawn from a sheet of marine plywood, and the order in which they are cut out of the sheet is controlled by software to minimize waste. In the same way like with the hull and deck milling, a multifunctional tool does all the work here, completing all of the required stages for the individual parts in a single run. The parts are sawn, the main grooves milled, the holes are drilled and cut. After 10 minutes, the machine has processed a sheet and the parts are sorted out in accordance with the yard models and stacked up on the transporter. Those parts already glued should not be varnished later on so that they can be glassed into the hull better. Any pieces of wood not used land up in the shredder before being burned in the yard's own solid fuel burner for heating purposes. The transporter with the completed wooden parts sets off on the transport system surrounding the joinery and heads towards the varnishing line. All transportation of material in the joinery is carried out in this manner. The first task at the varnishing line is to remove any fine particles of dust from the wooden parts. Then the first round of varnishing occurs. The first 2 coats are varnished onto the parts and then dried briefly in an oven. They are then given 2 more coats of varnish. After this, all 4 coats of varnish are completely dried and hardened using ultraviolet light before a further 2 layers are sprayed on. Then they are dried and hardened once more. In this manner, each wooden part receives 6 coats of varnish on its surface. A switcher robot turns the parts to their other side and they are put through the varnishing line once more. They are now ready and can be stacked back onto the transporter in the correct order for the yards before being transported to the furniture assembly section. While the wooden parts have been processed almost completely by machine so far, the actual assembling of the completed furniture is pure handwork. Only now do we see just how accurate the high-quality CNC machines are when preparing the individual components. All parts belonging to a specific item match perfectly together. Using a modular system, they are screwed together and glued. The individual parts are then passed on to the next stage where, bit by bit, a complete piece of furniture is created. A chart table with a corner seating unit or a complete galley. Of course, all of the components are fitted. The sink, cooling box, cooker, even the dustbin. The water and power connections have also been prepared before the furniture items go to the final quality control. Once they have passed through here without any problems, they are transported to the assembly line where they will wait 30 minutes at the longest before being fitted. During the final assembly, the yacht is fitted together completely. The hull, deck and furniture produced separately but in parallel are now assembled. Here too, just in time is the magic formula. As soon as a hull is placed on the final assembly production line, the joinery furniture and fittings are already waiting along the production line to be fitted in. In the hull of a sailing boat, the first task is to fit all the bulkheads, partitions and pre-assembled furniture. The parts fit to the exact millimeter, both to each other and into the hull itself. It takes just a short time for the parts to be fitted into the hull completely. All of the furniture and bulkheads are now glassed into the hull. In this manner, a comb system is created which plays a vital role in the yacht's structural stability. Once this work is completed, the remaining parts are then fitted into the yacht. The hulls are automatically pulled from one station to the next. Once the furniture is fitted, all of the yacht's pipes and cables are installed. The water and drainage pipes are connected up in the galley and toilet. Then finally, the yacht's complete electrical system is fitted into the hull. As much work as possible is completed while the hull is still open. This gives the employees more space to move around, ensuring the maximum level of precision with their work. Once all of the work has been completed in the yacht's interior, the pre-assembled deck is now put in place. Using the crane, it sways out of the deck assembly and over to where it is about to be fitted on. The sealed connection required between the hull and deck is achieved using a permanent elastic, before then being screwed and bolted together, while at the stern it is also laminated. The navigation equipment is installed on the deck, the instruments are connected and the motor control unit is checked. Also below deck they are now on the home stretch. The flooring is adjusted as required, the salon table is fitted and any final woodwork is completed. All of those parts required in the final assembly of the yacht are already stored along the production line and always close to the exact place where they are needed. Here too our motto is, a short route saves time and money. By now the yacht has reached the last stage in the final assembly. Fewer than 8 days have passed since the yacht began its life as a mold taken out of the store and about to have its first gel coat. However, the sailing yacht is still missing a highly important part, the keel. Depending on the yacht model, up to 5 tons of lead are waiting to be connected to the hull. Fitting the keel properly is one of the most demanding tasks when constructing a sailing yacht. Using a laser, the keel is vertically positioned. The thickness of the hull laminate in the keel section is tested and documented. Then glue is applied and the hull is lifted onto the keel. Now the workers' skills are called for, as they must work quickly and with total concentration. The hull has to sit precisely on the keel before the glue has had time to dry. Again and again the vertical axis of the hull and keel is checked by the laser until the final all clear is given. Only now are the bolts connecting both parts screwed together in the yacht's interior. Finally, the rudder still has to be fitted. By now the final work is being completed on deck. The upholstery, sails and other items are brought on board. Using the production order, which has been attached to the yacht during the complete construction phase, the final quality control is carried out. The yacht is tested with regard to the quality of its construction, how well it functions, and that it is complete in all respects. As soon as the controllers give their approval, the yacht's work is over. The finished yacht is transported to the external store, ready to be shipped. Like in the production process, where the just-in-time method has proven its worth, the exact same system is used for shipping. As the yacht knows at all times how the work is progressing on all its yachts, this permits it to give its dealers the exact delivery dates well in advance. It issues the shipping order to a company specialized in transporting yachts, and it collects them from Giebelstadt at the agreed dates. Before a yacht is shipped, the corresponding mast is included. However, it is first fitted at the customers. Customers everywhere look forward to their yachts from Giebelstadt. In every marina, on every continent, people value the quality shipbuilding work from Bavaria. Bavaria Yachts are designed by the well-known firm of designers J&J. Working together with them over many years has clearly proved its worth. In order to ensure that the construction is carried out most effectively, the finished drawings and designs are optimized in our yard. In our offices high above the production lines, the engineers and production managers at Bavaria Yachts discuss how the attractive designs for the new yachts can be realized in the most efficient manner possible during the production process. Because only a well-organized, rational construction, together with the use of high-quality components, can achieve such excellent quality at cost-effective prices. The yacht store of molds represents the first step in building a new yacht. For each kind of yacht available on the market, we have a suitable negative mold in store, totaling more than 50 different molds. Before and after each use, they are cleaned meticulously and checked for any potential damage. Once a customer gives the go-ahead for an order, the required mold is brought from the store